I'm Danielle Metz.
And I'm Robert Vaughn.
And this is the Danielle Metz Show. Quote, civilization is the progress towards a society of privacy. The savage's whole existence is public, ruled by the laws of his tribe. Civilization is the process of setting man free from men, observed Ayn Rand. Robert, we spoke in December of last year, episode 39, about the new Chinese social credit system, the totalitarian attempt to micromanage social behavior in order to, quote, restore morality and social trust. And I believe this topic deserves an update, because as of March 2019, 13.49 million individuals of its total population of 1.4 billion have been blacklisted, classified as untrustworthy, according to the data released by their National Development and Reform Commission of China. Their motto is, once accredited, everywhere restricted. If you fail in your so-called social duty to government, you'll be banned from travel, from loans, from education, and your personal information will be listed publicly, so all can see your shame and punish you accordingly. Not to be outdone by the commies, the European Union is developing the world's largest biometric database called the Common Identity Repository, which will include fingerprints and facial recognition data. And given the ongoing social media purge for wrongthink and manifest observable behavior, which has such real-life consequences as rendering its victims unable to use online payment processing systems, like PayPal and even MasterCard, to the ability to advertise their political campaigns, Carl Benjamin and Tommy Robinson, for example, and to do such basic things as use apps like Uber and Lyft, like Laura Loomer. So Robert, since Big Brother in both its political and corporate form is taking the private out of private citizen, have we lost our right to anonymity?
No. You never lose rights. Rights are a logical consequence of you living on Earth and as a human being. Rights are either protected or they're not. So I shy away from ever saying that we're losing our right to do this or we're losing our right. You should always place the blame on the people who are not protecting your rights or violating them. Governments are violating my right to carry a weapon if I wanted to. Governments violate my right to say what I want. And that doesn't mean I haven't got that right. The right exists. Government just violates it or doesn't protect it. And when it comes to privacy, it's quickly being violated, especially here in Canada under the Justin Trudeau China-loving cabal in Ottawa. So, no, and we should do something about it.
Well, I have a question. When it comes to private companies, do they have a right, or do they have the right to do what they're doing when they blacklist people? Like, for example, Laura Loomer, they've canceled all her accounts across the board for essentially just wrongthink. Is there a place for the government to interfere in that kind of thing, or is it just, well, too bad for her? Keep your mouth shut next time.
Yes, that place is the law courts. That's part of government. That's one branch of the government that this should go to. You should not necessarily legislate that a private company should allow somebody on their platform. And you can think of many reasons why that would be. Right now, we're just focusing on people like Laura Loomer or Paul Joseph Watson, whose ideas we often agree with. But what if there's somebody up there actually promoting murder and riots and violence, like the Democrats?
I mean, breaking the actual law, not just terms of service.
It's difficult in Canada and England, for example, where there are laws against speech that is so-called hate speech, which is an oxymoronic term. There's no such thing as hate speech. Hate is an emotion, speech is an action. And so when we talk about it's actually against the law, well, that's one of those areas where the government is violating our rights, isn't it? As far as what Laura Loomer and her ilk should do regarding this is take these people to court for suggesting that she's dangerous, as they have done, or suggesting that she is breaking the law by promoting hatred, which in some jurisdictions is against the law, and let the courts deal with it. But I'm really against having legislation to say that everybody should have a platform to voice their speech. That's not the case.
I think the fact that they're the government is obviously in bed with these corporations is I think originally where a large burden of this is. Because if they applied the law equally to all the corporations with their terms of service that they can just use whenever they feel like it, the government in the United States isn't holding them to task for being a platform or a publisher, which is delineated by their laws based on their responsibility for what's published on their platform, as it were. So they're not doing it. The government isn't stepping in and fulfilling its role in protecting the privacy, because these people there was a media release for these people who were purged that was sent saying we're banning these people from our platform. That to me right there is a breach of their privacy.
Well, but it's incumbent on the person who thinks that their privacy was breached to complain to the law. The law doesn't say, doesn't monitor these platforms and say that this is a breach of the law, so therefore I'm going to, as the law, going to unilaterally go take Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to court. That's up to the person whose so-called rights to privacy were violated. That's not up to a cop. It's not up to even a...
Well, yes. Well, unless you're in Britain where they determine it the other way around, where they come after you for the hate speech, regardless of whether anybody actually complains or not.
That's true.
They're proactive, which is the scary part. It's getting really frightening in Britain now in particular with you hear about the milkshake ban from McDonald's and all that stuff, and that just floors me. I can't believe that it's come to this, as it were.
Well, if milkshakes is the only thing they have to worry about, I think we're still in a fairly civil society.
Well, there's some bricks and bottles were thrown as well, from what I understand, the Tommy Robinson and the Carl Benjamin thing, but dumping milkshakes on people, and they think the fear is they don't know what's in the milkshake. You don't know what's in that. It could be acid.
That is true, and if they can get in front of Nigel Farage and toss a milkshake at him, what's to stop somebody from tossing acid at him or some sort of toxic chemical, as you say? That's people like that one Muslim guy who did that to Tommy Robinson, and that other fella who did it to Nigel Farage, and I understand Sargon Akkad was also attacked.
Yep.
These people should spend time in prison, and I mean serious time. This is a political campaign. This is not just some random person on the street out there glad-handing people. It's a politician running for office. And
That's
for
terrorism.
somebody to come up there and, well, yes, it is. You're trying to terrorize a politician, prevent him from going out and speaking. So I'm saying 5 years minimum for doing stuff like that, for actually assaulting them. And then those politicians should sue them civilly for the degradation that they had to suffer by having that milkshake thrown at them. I'm talking serious time for this nonsense.
And the fear too, right? You don't know what the person's intention is. You don't know it's just a milkshake. That is the terror behind it, and that's why they're doing it. But they're just turning a blind eye. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just a milkshake. Grow up. And it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is this is where it starts. What's the next step? Because they're emboldened now because there are not any consequences to their action. And that's a big thing. We live in a consequence-free society these days for people on the left, and that's just a horrible thing.
Yeah. To get back to your quote, though, from Ayn Rand, I really love that quote, and I'm familiar with it, of course, but I think she's hit upon a major distinction between an individualist society and a collectivist society. The individualist society respects privacy. That's almost part of the fundamental nature of it, is that what I do without violating anybody else's rights is absolutely nobody else's business at all.
Exactly.
As long as, again, there's objective laws that are complied with. That's the key, objective laws. What we're seeing now in Canada and the United States and, well, all over the world, is that laws are no longer objective, they're subjective. They're there to make sure that people adhere and comply and conform to a political ideology. Justin Trudeau, for example, last year, or was it the year before that, put conditions on receiving summer jobs grants to any organization or individual that complies with their, conforms to their political ideology regarding a woman's right to have an abortion, which meant, of course, that a lot of religious organizations couldn't apply for a government grant. Not that I necessarily suggest that there should be government grants in this area, but
no. But if they're out there, you have to apply it equally. You can't just go, well, yes, you because you agree with me politically, you no because you don't.
Right. So we're seeing that collectivist ideology being promoted by the government and by people like Trudeau and the Democrats in the States with their sanctuary cities, for example. It is an enforcement by government officials to reward those who conform to their collectivist ideology and to punish those who don't. So we're a far cry from Ayn Rand's notion of a private society. And
Well, it's interesting because in Britain, there's actually a person who hid his face when he noticed there was facial recognition software equipment around, and the cops took him to task for it. He basically told them to piss off, and they fined him £90 for protecting his own privacy. As Carl Benjamin said, Sargon of Akkad, he had a great quote. He said, "People always say that if you're not doing anything wrong, why should it bother you?" And he goes, "Well, if I have nothing to hide, then can you get to look? You don't
Right.
need to look because I have nothing." That's exactly the point. I've done nothing wrong. You don't need to investigate me for being completely innocent.
Well, of
And
course.
that's where the lines are drawn.
Take it to its conclusion. If you have nothing to hide, what's to stop you from letting cops into your house to examine your entire home? Everybody breaks the law because laws are no longer objective.
Yeah.
So it's quite, using that logic, quite easy to see where that can lead to. It can lead to a police state, which we talked about before.
Yeah, and isn't that a George Orwell quote about the fact that it's really easy being a cop in a police state because they have all the mechanisms at their disposal, and innocence isn't presumed.
I just read an article today about heat-sensitive cameras being used in the town of Slough, which is a community near London, England, where they flew over people's houses with infrared cameras to see whether or not they were using their outside outhouses, they call them, outside sheds, as places to board immigrants illegally. So not because they wanted to stop people from protecting illegal immigrants, or even immigrants for that matter, but because it would violate the zoning bylaws. And so they would crack down on them by having... Now, mind you, this was done before. It's just not with infrared cameras. In any sort of municipality, they just compare photos from one year to the other to see whether or not you actually got zoning for your pool or your fence or that extra shed you have.
And yet with the technology of drones and stuff like that, it's just, they can look at everything. There is... Keep your windows blinds drawn. Don't answer the door. Don't don't have a computer. Don't have Google Home like I do. It was funny because I went to my son took me to brunch last weekend in honor of Mother's Day. We skipped Mother's Day because we figured we'd be busy, and I went to look and see if a local diner was open, and it told me that I had last visited there 7 months ago. I'm like, I don't have GPS activated on my phone, but my home computer still knew I went to a diner 7 months ago. Because obviously it is still tracking me. That there's no technology. You can't have any technology if you want to maintain absolute privacy. It's so scary.
No, but then again, you did click on "I agree," didn't you?
Yeah, there's that terms of service again. That's how they get you every time. They can use it to blacklist you, and they can use it to sell your data. It's that terms of service. You know what we really need? A lot of lawyers on our side to go through the terms of service on everything and put it in Cole's notes form for everybody to actually understand what they're agreeing to, and no one would click "I accept."
Well, I don't know. Actually, a lot of people don't mind it because they want to know things like picayune things, like when you visited that restaurant last time. And the restaurant wants to know to get some data on the kinds of customers, the demographics who are visiting there, and a lot of people just don't care. I know other people who have Google Home as well, or I think that's what they call it. I don't have that kind of thing.
Alexa, or what's the other one? Siri.
Yes, yeah, and they don't care. As Sargon of Akkad probably alluded to, well, they've got nothing to hide, and they don't care about it.
Some people, it's the convenience versus privacy, right? Most people are willing to trade their privacy for the convenience of, like we have to a certain extent, letting the kids use Google Home. Well, I know it's listening to my conversations when it's not on. I know even my computer, even when the camera says it's not on, it's on. I know because I've had conversations with just the computer in the room, no Google Home, anything, and my computer has offered me commercials for things I've just mentioned in passing. And not like just coincidentally, like that's the predominant ad on most of the pages I visit. Is this for whatever it was? I think it was a pillow. And it was just, it's listening. But again, what can we do?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We can do something if you really want to. I mean, we're old enough to know before all of this technology came around and this convenient technology. So we are quite willing to be able to just shut it off, get rid of the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, even bloody computer, and say, well, no, I've got better things to do with my life. I got a lawn to mow, or whatever.
But life would be so dull.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? As you said, it's a trade-off. We're willing to suggest that they can have some of my data if they use it properly, and even sell it if you wish to companies, but they have to let me know that. And we like the services too much. They do provide such a fantastic amount of information that now we're starting to say that we can't do without it. I remember when I got phone calls from companies asking me if I wanted to buy a cell phone. I go, what do I want a cell phone for? And they would say, of course, well, if you're in your car and there's an emergency, you can always call somebody. And I go, there's always phone booths. I didn't get one for years.
I only got one because I had a young son, and my job at the time was I was at various locations visiting clients, so I was never at home. So if somebody needed to reach me in case of emergency, I needed to have a stationary line that they can do so. So that was convenience for me in that. But now, it's with you all the time.
That's true.
I'm not as addicted to it as the younger generation is. I like having it just in case somebody calls me. I actually use it as a phone.
Sort of digressed off the whole topic here, but one of the other ways that we're losing our privacy is the cashless society.
Yes.
Which we seem to be doing willingly, but there are some places, especially in Europe, where they don't accept cash anymore, which I think should be against the law. And
I
for
agree.
this reason, because right on it, on the money, the currency, I should say, it says, or it used to say, for all debts public and private. So there has to be a way that you can pay your debts without having to subscribe to another company like MasterCard, Visa, Diners, whatever, who take a hit or take a cut and pay off your debts without having that burden of being a subscriber to a service that you don't necessarily want to subscribe to.
Or not only that, but what if you want to buy something and not have it tracked? Like if you go to say you want to go buy to the liquor store, or you go to the marijuana store or whatever, and you don't want that knowledge that you were there to be made public. Say you're like, for whatever reason, it's your own reason, you're private. Cash, that's what cash is for. It maintains your privacy because there's no they don't know your name, they don't know your number, any of that stuff. And I think that's part of the frightening thing about what Silicon Valley is doing by depersoning people, is as we move towards the cashless society, more and more people are going to be hamstrung because they'll be refused payment processing services by specific companies because they're all in bed together. And that's where it gets...
I have to laugh at these deplatforming or people like MasterCard or what was the name? What's that?
PayPal?
Not PayPal, but the other one that Tommy Robinson was recently just kicked off.
Oh, Patreon?
No. Stripe or something like Stripe.
Stripe. Yes, Stripe. That's right. Because Stripe
and then
is,
Tommy's lawyer sent them a nasty letter, basically saying, you better have good reasons for doing this. And so they reinstated him. But my point is that I think that money handlers, since the government has basically taken over the job of printing money, printing currency, that no, these companies should not be allowed to do that. As a matter of fact, they don't do it for murderers. They don't do it for people in jail. You could still have a bloody bank account, even though that you're a murderer in jail. You could be a mass murderer and have a bank account and a MasterCard and a Visa. But
how dare you wrong think?
If you badmouth Hillary Clinton, whoa, all of a sudden you're depersoned.
Hold up there, buddy. That's just too far.
No, so just to get back to your point, no, we're not. We never lost our right to our privacy. Ayn Rand is totally right. The more individualistic a society is, the better our privacy is protected. And the only thing we have to do is be vigilant that the government, what they're doing today in all over the world, is violating that right. It's not a fundamental right, by the way. It's a corollary right based on our property and our own life and liberty. But that corollary right is not being protected properly and sufficiently by the courts and by the government, and it's incumbent upon us and those who feel that their privacy is being infringed upon to take it to the courts. Now, there's another issue there. Why spend $10 million and 20 years in jail, 20 years in court trying to protect a right that should be so blatantly obvious that it's being violated? I think that people should just be able to go down to your local arbitrator and say, here's the issues, right? Okay, the other guy got 30 days to respond. No response, okay. I find in your favor, that kind of thing, or against you. It should be so simple.
But then what would all the lawyers do? They wouldn't be able to charge all their fees to make sure that you have the correct color paper and that it's clipped in the quite presentable way for the judge to see, to sign off on, to therefore adjourn to the next meeting where you do the same thing, add, rinse, repeat. It's ridiculous. It's a self-perpetuating system.
Yeah, it's a story for another day, I guess.
Yes. And so on that note, which I hate saying, but I say it anyway, take care, behave yourself, we'll talk again soon. Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this presentation, visit justrightmedia.org for more programming that's not right-wing, it's just right.